Hello, my darling daughter. How are you today?
Hello. I am sleepy and fine. Well, how are you?
Awesome. You know what? I feel bright, sunny, hopeful. Something feels just sweet right now for me. So I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it in because it's not always like that.
That is true.
Yeah. So today on Far From the Tree, we talked about the subject of transitions.
Hmm.
Transitions are an interesting threshold, an interesting moment in time that often happens. Some of them are big, some of them are small, but well, to start with, you and your partner, your lovely Talbot, made a big transition not too long ago.
A couple of them.
Yeah. But before we jump in, how would you define transition?
Moving from one space to another in simple terms, whether that's physical or energetic or emotional or intellectual or anything for that matter.
Yeah. And I would agree. And I find transition to be one of a marked inhale, exhale. That's the
Mm.
best way that I can describe the transition. You're moving from one thing to another, and that there's that in between space also that occurs. So the transition to me is the in between space that says one thing is ended, a new thing is beginning. It hasn't fully anchored yet. And then now that we're in this new place, one thing is ended, a new one is beginning.
So for you, it's that process, that middle in between space, as opposed to the defining marks.
Right. For me, it's the end. It's the, okay, we ended something, something new is beginning, but
Hmm.
but we're right there in the in between. So
Yeah, I can see that.
what do
Where
you,
you,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say where you feel it moving, the process of shifting.
Yes. It's
Mhm.
funny. I think of the river Styx, if anybody's familiar with Egyptian mysteries and folklore and stuff. The river Styx was where the underworld, when you crossed over to the afterlife and you're being carried on the boat to the next life, if you will. So you're in the river Styx and you're mummified, and you're just in that. That to me is the transition, point of like I'm traveling, I'm making this turn towards something next.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that.
What would you say is your biggest transition so far?
In life or this year?
You decide.
That's complicated.
I know. I like throwing those complicated out there.
I mean, I can go through my entire life and tell you all the transition points.
Okay, that will
Okay.
probably take up a long time.
All right.
Okay, one most significant in the last year, then. Just pick one.
Hmm. The choice to pick up and move more than once.
I was gonna say that was at least twice.
Hmm.
Yeah. What did you find as being the best part of it and the worst part of it?
Okay. The worst part, easy, is sitting and living in boxes for weeks. The idea of moving, the moving part, so to speak, prior to the transition itself, right? The packing, are we getting the U-Haul? Are we sending things out? Are we sitting in this stuff for 3 weeks and it's, oh God, and we got to keep working through it. And it's just exhausting just to like have that in your mind space, right? Like local moves, easy. Okay, cool. We'll have everything packed up in like a week and put it on a truck. And that's like a weekend and we unpack and we're done. Whereas major moves, you're hopefully not doing things last minute. Please, for the love of God, don't do things last minute. That is so stressful. It's equally stressful to live in that stuff, but at least you know that you've done everything up until that point. You're not rushing around, right? Donating, selling things, packing stuff up, whatever. But living in it, I would say, is better. Getting everything done ahead of time at least for me, quells my anxiety, because otherwise I'm thinking about I'm thinking about all the things I could be doing before I'm actually ready to go.
Yeah, that anticipation point, the preparation, the what if, the unknown. I think I find that to be super stressful because, as human beings, we want this sense of security, but we don't know what's on the other side. So it's a little unnerving when, even if you have the best plan in place, what if the movers don't show up? What if the package doesn't get there? What if the car breaks down? Whatever, right? But I am going to share the story because I just think it's so cool. So anybody listening, when you guys decided to move out here, we're only 20 minutes away from each other now.
Same time zone.
Same time zone, thank goodness. But when that decision was made, everything just started to fall into place. And that to me is a really good notation for our audience to pay attention to, that when you make a decision, as my mother will say to my father, make a decision, Chuck, and we'll just adjust along the way. That I agree. Make a decision, get out of the inertia, start to go a certain direction. And when things are just lining up, that you're in alignment with what's true for you, what's right for you. Now, does that mean that this is the forever place? Who knows? But the bottom line is that everything is falling into place, and it has. And it was fun because you guys secured your place 3 weeks before you arrived. And because it's with a friend of mine, I got the key. So I could start doing little things in your place for you. And then it just worked out it made more sense for you to ship stuff and donate and all that sort of thing. And it was just in my perspective, now granted, I wasn't the one moving, but in my perspective, at least not this time, because I've done this, it wasn't so stressful because things were just lining up. I mean, there was stress, of course, but it seemed like everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah. The decision to move to Florida was get out of where we were as soon as possible. And we didn't think about all the factors because you can't know until you do the thing. And, living with a friend is awesome. Very grateful for that. However, the environment itself of like, this is a major city, this is fast paced, even if you're like 20 minutes outside of the major city itself, it's not really a suburb anymore. It's integrated into that major city. The best way I can describe the change is our nervous systems are calmer. I have noticed vast improvements in Talbot since being here, in how he handles himself, and he's managing how he's feeling and his reactions to certain things, and the way he's approaching things, and the way he's communicating, and the way he's going about doing things differently. It is like waking up from a nightmare in a sense. I hate to put it that way, but like from what I saw, that how being on the East Coast and being in a major city was affecting him, to here, that's kind of what it seems like. And the difference also is like, when the feeling I was holding on to was when we would travel out to the West Coast in general, whether that was stepping off the plane in Montana or visiting Utah or visiting you out here or being in Tahoe, whatever it is, was that when we stepped off the plane, we could breathe. It was like, oh, thank God. I made it. We're here. It feels so good to be here. Things aren't rushed. People are taking their time. People are cordial. And that's another thing, transition-wise, having to learn how to go with the flow of things out here and learning how to engage with people, because people actually take their time to talk with you. Whereas what we're used to is like get in, get out. Hey, how's it going? Pleasantries. Okay, what are you having? Okay, awesome. Here's the price. Pay. See you later. Instead of like, hey, how's your day? How are you? Wait, you're genuinely asking me. Oh, wow, okay. This is nice. Let's sit and talk for 5 minutes. Vastly different. But for me, like, transitions have been my entire life. And yes, I think a lot of people can say transitions have been in their lives too. But like, as far as moving, we lived in 10 different places before I was 10, something like that. And then other major transitions and moving houses and moving schools, and I'm used to it. It's okay. For me, the constant is my family. And so long as my family's intact, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I know not everyone is like that, but that is the constant that you're not having to give up. You're simply changing the environment.
You know what? That brings up a really good point for our audience too. And this is, how do you navigate transition? Because it is stressful. It is insecure in some ways. And it's to always have one anchor point, one taproot that goes deep into the earth, so to speak, and says, this is my center point, that no matter what chaos is floating around and uncertainty, I can always come back home to this. You know, for you, it's family. For others, it could be their job. For others, it could be their community. But I think that if nothing else, we're all going through transitions at various points in our lives, whether it's, bless you, whether it is transition for, something as simple as graduating high school. That's a transition, right? Or single to married, or married to divorce. I mean, those are some pretty big transitions too. But little transitions could be things like losing a friendship, finding a new one, right? Transition from, let's say you were sick, you were ill, and now you're healthy. See, we dismiss some of those common everyday things, but how we can navigate them, and they can build up, of course. And so, like I say, it's a good point to say, where's my center point? Is it my family? Is it my my health? Whatever. For a while, when I first moved out here, I was here, I'll say alone, in the sense of, I wasn't dating anybody, relationship, that sort of thing. And so it was just me. And I was actually falling in love with myself, really getting to know myself. And what is it that I do for play? What do I enjoy? And I found going to the gym being like a center point for me. And it still is. It's still a staple for me. Not because I'm some meathead, but it keeps me grounded. It keeps me in my body. It's the one thing that I know I'm good at. And it just allows me to have, whenever I have my anxiety kick in or my worries, the gym stabilizes me, or skiing now.
Right. You have those outlets.
Exactly.
I think you also bring up a good point about falling in love with you. You specifically have been caretaking more or less for your entire life, right? Or living under someone else's guise or house, where either I am the child or now I'm the parent and I'm the partner. And you're like, oh, well, this is the first time that I am me. I get to discover who I am. And I talk with a lot of people that when their parents are like, I forgot who this person is before being a parent, because I've been a parent for X amount of years. Like, I don't know what I like anymore. I don't know all these things. And you having to get back to you, I think, is really important.
Mm-hmm. That's the gift of transitions. If we give ourselves permission to take time to navigate the transition, to pay attention to it, then that's where we have a chance to get to know ourselves at a deeper level. It's like, wow, I'll use the Disneyland experience. I use this with clients a lot, but it's like, notice what happened before, notice what happens during, and notice what happens after. And I equate it to the Disneyland experience because Disney has been really good at cultivating that for their guests, right? And even their cast members, where it's like, okay, what happens for the guests when they say, they're looking at the commercials or they're driving by or whatever, and it's like, ooh, it's a magical place. They're having an experience before they even reach out and say, I'm going to buy a ticket. Then once they buy the ticket, Disney puts it in this beautiful wrapping and welcome, you're our guest, and making sure that all your experience as you're preparing to come, and then once you get to the parks and the hotels, it's a magical place, right? And then afterwards, you should walk away feeling probably exhausted, but but like you had the best time of your life. And so, anyways, it's all about the experience and creating it. And I think that's one thing that, as a human being, that we can do if we have that mindset. It really does make life a little more humorous, a little bit lighter, a little bit more in perspective, where we don't take it so seriously. I'm not saying that bad things don't happen. I'm not Pollyanning all this, but I will say that when I have a bad moment, I can find myself laughing at myself because, and not in a bad way, but because it's like, okay, what experience I'm having pain right now. I'm having anxiety. I'm insecure. I'm paranoid, whatever. Look at me be human. How amazing is that? You know?
The beautiful opportunities that present themselves in our everyday. But we
Absolutely.
take everything so seriously.
Right. Yeah. Well, as one of my yoga teachers has said, take your practice seriously, but not yourself. So
Yes.
the practice, whenever I'm in a transition point, which does cause me stress because I have a control freak inside of me that wants to know, where am I going? What is happening? You know, and what's going to happen to me? And, you know, what if I don't, I have to try and figure all these things out. My mind just starts doing all this planning thing. Like, okay, if I get this today and then this happens and then that happens, then I'll be okay. But if it doesn't, you know, this whole ball of yarn that happens in my mind. So anyways, what practices do I have? Okay, I can start planning. I can ground. I can breathe. I can, you know, I have all these tools that I'll take seriously, but not me, because I'm just being human.
I like that. Yeah, there's some levity and some humility in there.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you see as being some of the greatest challenges for yourself, your clients when it comes to transitions?
Leaving your comfort zone. We don't grow when we're comfortable. We stay stagnant and comfortable when we're comfortable. We even can grow complacent, right? Oh, this will always be here. This is really stable. This will never leave me. And we can start taking advantage of whatever those things are, whether that's the people around us or the financial opportunities that are presented to us or our health or whatever it is, right? That kind of delusion of invincibility, I like to call it.
Mm,
Oh, bad things can't happen to me. Not me. My health is fine. And then I get sick. Oh,
mhm,
they won't leave me. We've been married for 20 years, but they've been really upset and I'm not listening.
mm,
So
yeah.
if we are too comfortable in where we are, things die. My Talbot and I like to say, if we're not growing, we're dying. To an extent. And it's not this like I have to constantly be working towards something, but it's the challenge of I am being challenged right now. How can I approach this challenge? How can I face it? And then when there is a plateau where things feel really nice and easy, can I just enjoy that for what it is for however long I have it? Because I know it's going to change. And when it changes, I have to face this next thing.
Yeah. It's always a fine line because you're right. Why the juxtaposition is, why create change for the sake of change?
Mm-hmm.
Right? But don't get so comfortable that you, like you say, that you get complacent, take things for granted.
Right.
So this is where my practices of consciousness assist me, where I evaluate the areas of my life where I'm getting too comfortable
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, is there something here that I need to stretch and grow a little bit? Because, and it's funny, I was actually talking with the executive director of Nine Gate yesterday, and we were going through year-end stuff and looking ahead. And I said to her, I said, it's time. I said, I feel resistance to it. So I know it's time. It's time for me to stretch and grow a little more in this role. And I said, I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm putting it out there as an accountability partner. And she smiles over the phone and she says, okay, let's go. Let's keep playing with it. What it's going to ask of me, I don't know yet. But right now, so my indicator for my comfort zone is I check in to see where I've gotten too comfortable, and then what am I resisting? Because that resistance is like the threshold or the door that I'm ready to step over, and I'm unwilling to look at it. So that's where I'm like, okay, let me embrace this. And I'm going to be nervous as hell. I'm going to be, uncomfortable, but that's the growth.
How would you describe that sensation in your body?
For me, it's a tightness. I get a tightness in my diaphragm. I'm a kinesthetic individual. I'm clairsentient. So everything that I get talks to me through the body. I mean, I get visuals and audio too, but that's my primary. And so when there's a resistance, it's usually my inner archetype of rebel kicks in of like, I'm not fucking doing that. Or why would I want to do that? That means I have to give up something else. Because here's the other thing, laws of nature that require balance. And in order to achieve something, something has to be sacrificed. This is just the human experience. We live in a dichotomy. You cannot have good without evil. You cannot have light without shadow. You cannot have something to achieve without sacrificing something else, because where attention goes, energy flows, right? So here I am going, okay, I'm ready to stretch and grow and do a little bit more with mystery school. Well, what do I have to sacrifice? I've got a business to run. I've got skiing I want to do. I got friends and family I want to spend time with. Something's going to give. So,
yeah, you're right. And the people that care about you and want to see you succeed will make those adjustments and help you get there.
absolutely. That's a great point. So what do you think is the key to, how do I want to say this, to transition, to navigating transitions in a healthy way, especially when others are involved?
Depends on all the dynamics, of course, but honestly, the thing that has been working for us is kind of moving in silence until something is concrete. I have the bad habit of getting really excited about something and saying, oh, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what's happening, before there is, signatures on the dotted line or a concrete answer from somebody else or whatever it is. And when if that thing decides to fall through, now I have to go back and backtrack to everyone that I've said something to and say, oh, well, then this didn't happen. This didn't work out. Instead of going through with this thing and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing or what we have decided to do. And so it is. We get to be the, I guess, integral part of that transition piece in not over communicating because of excitement or even out of anger and resentment and spite and all these things. It's move in silence. When things are ready to go, you get to make that announcement. The people that are close to you, the people that you feel safe with, to discuss how that is moving, right? For instance, our move, Mom, we're thinking about this. I know you want us out here, but I'm going to need your help because we're not out there to go find a place. What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, when it's solidified, when I sign the lease, then I can tell everyone else, hey, we're actually out of here. Even, I would say, even with jobs, right? You may tell your employer, I'm looking for something. Okay. So they're prepared. You might be leaving. Fine. But not, hey, I'll have this interview. Well, the interview might not go well. You may not be able to put in your 2 weeks on Friday, right? You may have to keep looking.
Yep. That's a good point and good lesson for all of us to learn about, also, who do you feel safe to talk to about stuff like that, right? Which leads me to another thing about transitions, and what is helpful is good communication. So it's, yes, not speaking too soon about certain things, holding certain things close to your chest. There's a manifestation quality when it comes to saying something as well. Very often, if you speak it, then you have to do it, kind of thing, that person of your word. So there's that. In some ways, it's okay to say something, but knowing your audience and who to say it to, right? Yes. Like if you and Talbot were talking about it, that's okay. But to share it worldwide is a whole nother thing. And then once things are in transition, once you've made that decision, you start moving that direction, then whoever is going to be affected by that decision and those actions, that's where good communication comes in. I think that's another thing about transition. And also your support group, you know.
Mhm.
And if you have your team members, your community together to support you with that, that also can help. Because again, transitions are scary when we don't know what's coming. They, to me, they're adventurous too, and that awakens that adventurous in me, you know. But it's hard if it's a transition that you didn't ask for, that you
Mhm.
weren't looking for. That's harder than the ones that you are looking for. When life presses upon you, throws you that curveball, forces you to make a transition that you weren't even thinking about making. And that's kind of where I'm pointing to is, have that support group
Mhm.
and make sure you're communicating what's going on,
No, I think that's an excellent point. Getting fired, going to jail, having a divorce, whatever, getting evicted, right? You absolutely have to start communicating. I don't have a place to live, or I'm not going to have finances until I find something new, or my entire life has been uprooted. Who can we call on for support? Whether that's, can you take the kids? Can you help me with, cooking dinner? Can I stay with you? Those things are hard.
Absolutely. That reminds me of a story that Papa, my father, shared with me the other day when we were talking. He shared it before, but I hadn't remembered it. And then for whatever reason, it came up again. And it's a really cool thing. So it was his grandfather, my great great grandfather, right? Yeah, or my great grandfather. I'll get there. My great grandfather. He was a person of the 1800s, late 1800s, and then into the Depression. And he had started the first general store in the city of Warsaw, Indiana. And the Depression hit. This is that curveball. Depression hit, store went under. He had all this debt. And so he started making furniture during the Depression. My parents still have some of the furniture. And he slowly but surely built himself back all the money that he had lost during the Depression, and he paid back all of the debtors, even though they said he didn't have to. It was like filing bankruptcy. And they just said, you don't owe us that. But he made a point to go back to every single one of them and paid every single debt off when he could. And I just thought, that's cool. That is a man of resilience and integrity that said, even though I could be let off the hook and this wasn't my fault, the depression happened, that sort of thing. He was resilient enough to be able to, one, find other ways to make money to pay bills. And then also, once he had more than he needed, because he had his farm and all that, once he had more than he needed, he paid back the debt. So I think, one of the gifts of transition is it really does bring out character.
Yeah, you can see the worst in people. You can see sometimes the best and everything in between.
Right. Right. This is all part of the human experience. I mean, there's no way out of it. There's that whole transition of life and death. That's the big transition. We're born and we die. But whatever the belief system is, as far as where we come from and what you go back to, the facts are there is a marked moment of taking your first breath and taking your last breath. And we practice, at least I practice in this lifetime, making these transitions in my life, learning from the ones that I've not done very well and becoming more aware and more conscious and practicing living more consciously. So, and going through transitions more consciously, more kinder than I was before. So that at that time when I'm stepping across that threshold, taking my last breath, I can die a good death. So that for me is part of the practices. And whatever happens after that last breath, I have my belief system. So I'm not afraid of it. Let's put it that way.
Well, you can see life itself as the transition,
Mhm.
right? Coming into the world is a transition for those involved, and then us being in this space, yes.
Mhm.
We were just transitioning through whatever this experience is until we get to the final transition of death in this capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And so instead of cursing the transitions, is even the unwanted ones, instead of cursing them, if like I say, we can go back to that moment of like, oh, this is an opportunity to practice. I'll take that seriously. I won't take myself seriously. So, any last thoughts on transition?
It was funny that you brought up the Disneyland experience, because my especially when it comes to relationships, the whole Disney movie experience, right? Where there's a person, they have this quest, and then they like find love, and then it's happily ever after, and then we never get to see what comes after that. Everything that comes after that is the true marker of the transition. How do we navigate all the happily ever after stuff? Because we're not always happy, and not everyone lasts till ever after. Like longevity or quantity of time spent together. There are all the messy in between pieces that we don't get to see and we're not adequately prepared for. And I think that present, if we're going with the Disney movie theme, the present Disney movies, the ones that have come out in the last 5 years or so, have done a better job of not addressing that happily ever after in the same way they did 30-40 years ago. They've done it as like, this is the life, this is the experience that's being had, and this is how the X family is navigating it, and Y person sees how this is happening, all these dynamics. It's bringing to light actual circumstances, actual family patterns, actual problems that are happening, that give voice to so many people that have probably not felt like Cinderella finding Prince Charming, or Snow White being kissed by Prince Charming, or Sleeping Beauty, or whatever. By the way, Prince Charming is kind of a hoe. Anyway.
He looks different every time.
Sure. But you have movies like Encanto, where it's addressing all of these different family dynamics. You see all of these different people in the family dealing with their stuff, having to be too strong, being the black sheep, being the one who doesn't feel so special, being the family, the patriarch, matriarch keeping secrets. All of those things happen in real life. And yes, Cinderella, you can identify with being the outcast of the family, because that absolutely happens. But the old stuff has given us this like fake way of viewing life, whereas this new stuff is like, oh my God, that's relatable. Thank God. Other people deal with this, even if you're not real. Cool. Thank you for giving me that and allowing me a character or a song or a movie to identify with now. And then I get to watch this journey of this person, how they've handled these things, and I can better navigate what is happening, as opposed to being left with all these questions.
Yeah, what you're pointing to is the old Disney was fantasy, what
Absolutely.
we strive for, what we dream about, but it's not reality.
No.
And the new Disney is more reality based of
Mhm.
what is actually happening in this human experience. And I think, and the animation has come a long way in supporting that.
Mhm.
When it comes to, I'm going to do a yes and everything you said, and the way that I like to use the Disneyland experience now is in a reality based of what experience do I want to have in this partnership?
Mhm.
What experience today do I want to have? What experience do I want to have when I'm working with my clients, or when I'm working out, or when I'm going to ski, or whatever it might be, interacting with you? Is the experience, and it points back to our conversation with like people pleaser that I suffer from, where it's like, okay, I want everybody to be happy and harmonious and everybody get along, and I'll be the peacemaker and people please and all that. And now when I ask myself, what experience do I want to have? The experience is, I want whatever shows up organically, that I can meet it. I don't have to be the people pleaser. I can hold the space. I can be the person who challenges and creates a little conflict. And the experience I want to have is healthy conflict. The experience I want to have is a meeting of the minds. The experience I want to have is supporting my partner. If this is what he needs to be the best version of himself, then so be it, things like that.
So for summing it up, moving in silence,
moving
relying
in
on your support system, having your constants or your touch points to fall back on, having humility, not taking things so seriously. Did I miss something?
And asking yourself, what experience do I want to have? What experience am I creating and I want to have right now? So, and I think the other thing is recognizing that transitions are always happening, that it's an invitation to just pay attention and to come back to ourselves. Thank you for playing with me today.
Thank you, Mama.
Talking about this, and I love you. And I look forward to our next one. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, watching. Please comment, subscribe, share, and we'll be back in another Far From the Tree not too long from now.
Thanks, y'all. Hear me now. Whatever you do, please allow good sleep for the rest of my days. I had a client say to me, like, oh, I woke up and I felt really disoriented and dizzy and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, hey, girl, it's like Mercury retrograde. And she's like, my boss said that to me. And I had no idea what that was. And I went into stuff and she's like,